My really dear friend, Stephen Cowan.
Well, thanks for coming. I mean, I don't know, every time I've been to Florida, it looks like this, and everybody keeps saying, oh, we got a really beautiful day today, but I just came from the horrible New York ice and rain, and it was a trial just getting to the airport. And I'm here, I'm like, whoa, I died and went to heaven. It's amazing. So thank you for coming out on this day. You braved the weather, exactly. And Ellen, thank you so much for setting this up. I really appreciate it. Any opportunity to talk to parents or teachers or doctors when I can get them in a room together, it's really important to me. And you've done a really good job, and I think I'll support you in your project any way I can. And Dan, your words are gold. So I could leave now because what you said was actually the point of today. Originally, when I was talking to my daughter about, why was I coming to talk here, the language I've been using lately has been with parents, how to raise a mensch. And it resonates very deeply in my family, and in this community it may too. Everyone knows what a mensch is, right? So a mensch is a Yiddish word. Well, what's a mensch?
It's like a kind person.
Kind person. Yeah, the word actually in Yiddish is just a person, but it's actually not a person. It's a human. So it's a humane human, which is a little different than just a person. A person has got a number, a social security number. A mensch is something above and beyond that, okay? And, as a pediatrician, one of the most frustrating things in my life was I was originally on track to become a surgeon because I was really good with my hands. I was an artist, and everybody wanted me to be a surgeon. And I didn't really like the surgeon's mentality. And I kept being drawn to families and raising kids. And one of the things that was curious about my training as a doctor was, it was, in New York City, I was at Columbia and at St. Luke's, and it was very powerful in the 80s, kind of devastating time. And I was really good. I became chief resident. I was really good at saving lives. I was like House. I could walk into a room, and in an instant, I could diagnose and start barking orders on, you need this, this, let's go, and it was very intense. And I was good at it. And basically, good meant diagnose really fast to get them out of the ER. We called it treat and street. And that was the model of medicine. It still is the model of medicine. And when I finished, there was something gnawing away at me, because there was other parts of raising a child. I had my own kids, they were babies at that time, and none of that was interface. My wife was asking me all these questions. You're a pediatrician, you should know the answer. And I know how to, intubate a baby and push drugs and do all this, but she was asking me, should the poop look like that? And so I could feel there was this split happening. I was being pulled in two different directions. And then I went out, I was doing my subspecialty in child development, and I was really entranced with that. At the time, I was working with AIDS babies and cerebral palsy kids, and I was interested in kids with chronic physical illnesses and how that affects their development. And the more I looked at that, the more interested I was at this whole concept of developing. I mean, what are we developing? Where are we going? Is the question. And, I realized, I started a general practice that kind of took off. It exploded in Westchester. I at one point had 14,000 patients. And I was seeing a lot of kids a day. And I realized very shortly into that practice that I basically didn't know anything about raising kids, that my training as a pediatrician was geared to emergencies. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think American medicine in emergency medicine is profound. It's amazing, and it's been exported around the world. But it's, the perspective of a doctor is that that's medicine, when in reality it's less than 1% of health. Do you understand? Most of the health problems, or even health questions you have, don't fall into that category of emergencies. And one of the mantras that I keep teaching parents when they come in with their child, whether it's because they're not pooping, or they're not learning, or they're not sleeping, or whatever, is, hold on, this feels like an emergency, but it's actually not an emergency. It's a process that we're going to move through, and we're moving somewhere. We're going somewhere. We're learning something. Your child is learning something. But if we're in emergency mode, we're looking for something for me to fix. And I'm not Mr. Fix-It anymore. So I've been doing this for 30 years, and fixing things, that word is a problem, because as soon as you say that, it means your kid is broken. And it's very rare that I see a kid that's broken. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a kid that's broken. So there is this thing, a woman, Carol Dweck, wrote a very good book called Mindset, which I urge you to read. It's really great. Fits in my philosophy very much so, which is about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And in the emergency model, when you're in the middle of an emergency, it's not the time to be talking about growth and where we go. It's help me, let me, and that's a fixed mindset, and it's very practical in emergencies. But that's only 1% of the time. Growth mindset honors the journey, honors the process, honors the organic nature of a being. And the more frustrated I got with those dialogues that I was having with parents every single day, the more I realized that the medicine I learned was not satisfying that. And so 20-something years ago, I went back and started learning other medicines. First homeopathy, and that wasn't enough for me because it wasn't quite a system that I needed to understand. It wasn't organic enough for me. And then I discovered Chinese medicine through our mutual mentor, Ephraim Korngold. And that kind of blew my mind, because suddenly it gave me something that I've been searching for, which was a model of understanding growth in all its different levels. And so, raising a mensch, it becomes a question of what do we want for our children? So I just want to run around the room very quickly. I'm going to make a list up here of how many of you have kids? Okay, easy. So that's good. How many of you were kids? Not everybody raises their hand. Every time I ask that, some people what does he mean? How many of you, are you still kids? Good. Me too. So I want you to shout out a word that represents something you want for your kid when they grow up. Okay, let me write these up here. Okay, so kind, resilient, but say more. That's a fancy word. Confidence, okay, confidence. Aware, okay, good. Independent. What? Yeah, that's like aware, independent. Compassionate. Joy, compassion. Hold, guys, I'm left-handed. I don't write that fast. Loving. I don't have that much wood in me, man. What? Courageous, good.
Spiritual. Faithful.
Good.
Spirited.
Spirit. Okay.
What about self-regulating?
Another fancy word. Self-regulating. Calm. Creative.
Cool.
We got all the C's going here. Playful. Keep going. Curious. Good word. Whole. I like it. Well, healthy doesn't say much. We're getting to healthy.
Motivated?
Motivated, that's a good one.
Fulfilled.
Good one.
Someone said balanced.
Balanced,
Anchored.
good one too. These are all excellent, excellent. You guys are, you can go home now. Anchored, balanced.
Grounded.
We're getting to the bottom here. Balanced, grounded. Well, that's like anchored, grounded. Good. So these are beautiful. And I want to talk about how to get there. Because these all are the language of my work now. Exactly these things are the language of what I'm doing now to help parents understand the journey of how to get your kid there. Because these actually all define a mensch. These are the mensch. Okay? But how to get there, what I want to do is give you a little meat on the bones of this. And that is, I want to give you some neurology, sort of the basis of this. Now, you can go in different ways to understand it, but when I wrote the book, Fire Child, Water Child, I wrote because early on it was very apparent to me that my two kids were not only not the same, but polar opposites. And how does that happen if everything's genetic, right? If the same womb, the same gene pool, how can they be completely opposite kids? It was a mystery to me, and I kept seeing it again and again and again in all the families I took care of. And I really was intrigued with that. It must mean something, that they're different, and they have different interests, and they have different strengths, and they have different challenges, and it was confounding, and I needed a language to understand that so that it wasn't so judgmental. Now, if you only use the gene model, that's a fixed mindset. That's what you've been given, pal. Sorry. There's nothing you can do about it. It turns out that's not true, that the science of genetics, the cutting-edge science of genetics is what's called epigenetics, is...
Woohoo! Sorry, I need a shout out.
Yeah. Do you need water?
Thank you.
I'll get you one. I'm an earth type. I'll get you. So epigenetics, we are still thinking in the 40s and 30s that genetics is some hardwired thing that says this is, do you know 23andMe? Do you know about 23andMe, this new thing you can send away and get back your 23 chromosomes and it'll tell you your risk for blood pressure? It's nonsense. It's a complete ripoff because epigenetics is the cutting edge understanding of genes, which is they're these like flowers, these organic things that open and close. The genes are embedded in these proteins called histones, and the histones open and close based on what? Yeah. So, yeah, life. Environment opens and closes, and certain parts of the genes get read and certain parts don't get read, and the next day they do get read, and the next day they don't get read, and the next day something else gets read, and that's the organic nature. So nothing is written in stone. Same thing is true with IQ tests, fixed mindset, versus a growth mindset, which is saying that, you're changing all the time. So that in understanding these different models, what I ended up doing was, in Chinese medicine, they think seasonally. Everything is built on a sort of organic farming quality of how to raise tomatoes, which is much more akin to raising a kid than building a car. But my training as a pediatrician was more like building a car. Assembly line education has become a lot like car manufacturing, when it should be more like raising tomatoes, right? So if I have, as a developmental pediatrician, if I have two kids in two different rooms, and the book says that they should be walking because they're both two, one is going to get a diagnosis if he's not walking. But if I have two tomato plants, one in Miami and one in New York, and I say they should have 5 tomatoes on them on August 21st, that's just dumb. Right? So that's the problem, is that we have microclimates called families, right? Or communities. And I'm really interested in, within ourselves, we have a microclimate. And so I want to lay out for you sort of the neurology of this so that you understand how to raise a nice mensch tomato plant, right? So on the ground floor, we have this thing I like to call them hearts, but I'm going to call them circles today. So on the ground floor, it's like the brain stem and beyond. So the brain stem is sort of in your neck, and it wires out to all your organs. And it's got a little hand on your heart, and a little hand on your belly, and a little hand on your nervous system, and a little hand on your muscles. Every organ is wired into this. And it's sort of a fundamental importance in our way of connecting to the world. So a lot of my work is with attention, right? Attention deficits and learning problems and things like that. And so this is a kind of fundamental way we pay attention. But it's on a body awareness way. So one is, we'll say eating, right? Hunger. Another is sleeping. Another is moving, the coordinate. These are rhythms. This is the rhythm section. In fact, it's called the R complex in medicine because it stands for the reptilian brain. I like to call it the dragon heart because it's this very old part of our being. We have pooping and breathing, which is really kind of the rhythms of breathing and pooping, elimination, the rhythms of eating, the rhythms of moving, the rhythms of sleeping, and finally, the rhythms of sensing. And all those centers are located in your brain stem and beyond. And these are really the fundamentals. You know, when people say, well, what does it mean to be healthy? This is the ground floor of health. If you can poop and sleep and eat, you're basically healthy on a very basic level. In fact, if you're in a coma, and you get hungry, or you can breathe on your own, or you have a sleep-wake cycle, we say you're not brain dead, and nobody's going to unplug you, okay? Unless they don't really like you, right? So this is a way of connecting on a rhythm level, the beat or pulse of life. And the synchronization of this to the surrounding world has this phenomenon that a famous guy, Stephen Porges, out in California, describes as neuroception. Neuroception, which means, like perception, it's a body awareness of your synchronization of the world around you. It's sort of body intelligence, right? So when these are all working together, and there's a relationship between them all, you feel good on this very body level. Now here in Florida, as soon as I got off the plane, I started feeling good because I wasn't like walking to the airport, fighting, and it's like, wow. So this level is talking to me, the body awareness. And it's very important in children. How many of you have newborns or little ones? So if you remember with little babies, they're living here most of the time. And the sensing is the most refined rhythm of the rhythm section. It's vibrating, whether it's your ears or your eyes or your nose or your mouth, taste. They're vibrating at a very high frequency, and it's a way of trying to orient and synchronize and be the world. Essentially, it is the world. So this is the rhythm section of the band that we're creating, right? You get that. On top of that, we evolved something called the limbic system that literally sits above it. It's what I call the puppy brain because it acts a bit like a puppy. It's the heart of the heart. It's a very intense. If I had a frog in this room and I had a puppy in this room, they would be involving themselves in the room in very different ways. The frog would sit there and hope nobody sees it. And the dog would, trying to check everything out, right? So there's this very intense quality to the mammal brain. This is the mammalian brain. We evolved this one above it. And what its job is to express to the world the level of synchrony of the reptilian brain. Let me say that again. We evolved this beautiful aspect of our nervous system to be able to call out into the world and describe our nature. What do I mean by that? Well, one example is this. We get really excited. My puppy, we're going for a walk, and oh boy, we're going for a walk, and wagging furiously and pees on the floor. So what that is the limbic system overriding the ability to hold it in, neurochemically speaking. It's just the intensity is so great that it kind of overwhelms the basic rhythm. You might get so excited, your movements get more agitated. You get so excited you can't eat, or you get so excited you can't sleep. But most importantly, you get so excited that your senses get amplified. This is an amazing thing. We love that. We pay a lot of money for that. That's a rush. That's why we go on roller coasters. I can't convince my golden retriever to go on a roller coaster, because we humans love this feeling that, like, wow, I'm alive. Because there's a very intense quality of this heart, this aspect of ourselves, is involved with the rush of now. This is the rhythm, the beat, and this is the now. You might call this the lead guitar in the band. This is very intense, right? Very intense. And so the now quality of attention, it's not pathology, it's just intense. My dog might be a little aggressive, hostile, right? Mailman, alert! He's doing his job. He's letting everyone know, the heart's beating, that something's off in the terrain, the environment. Something's off. Mailman, even though it's the same stupid mailman he's seen every day, like it's the end of the world, right? Same thing, when he's in that state, he's going to dysregulate downstream. This is the base. This is the basic security. The third is, my puppy withdraws. She hears thunder, and she's under the bed, and I can't get her out. Right? So we call that fight or flight. This is rest and digest. This is fight or flight. This is the parasympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. So, and this also will dysregulate downstream. The next is we are creatures of habit like all other mammals, and this gets to be a little rigid, a little compulsive. Little stuck. So, I do a lot of hiking, and in the woods around us in Westchester, there are all these paths. And they're really weird. Like I'm a city boy. When I first came up there, I said, wow, someone made paths all through the woods. They said, no, those are deer paths. The deer made the paths by walking exactly the same way every day the path gets made, because if they survived it one day, they're going to do it exactly the same way the next day, and the day after, and the day after, almost like a superstition. I'm not stepping over, even if a log's down, they're going to go right. That's the way I did it yesterday, I'm going to do it. So that's a kind of mammalian quality of security that also, if it gets a little too intense, is going to dysregulate downstream. And finally, we're pack animals, okay? And when we're separated from the pack, we get worried, we get anxious. If you have a new puppy and you go out for dinner, the neighbors are complaining because he's been crying the whole time you've been gone, because you're the pack leader now, and he's like, right? Because they want to be with the pack. And this quality also leads to a kind of worry, we'll call it, a kind of separation anxiety that can eat away at you. All of these have the ability, they're just calling out. And what they're calling out is that, in a way, if you think of these two together, this is a very intense, deeply personal experience. Let me tell you something about this one. Let's do a little exercise. for the reptilian, the dragon brain. Everybody, put your cameras down, sit up, feet on the floor. And what I want you to do is say hello to gravity. Okay, close your eyes and just feel your tailbone on the chair. In fact, what I want you to do is really, really trust the chair. Now you kind of know, you've been sitting here for a while, and you know the chair's not going to fall down and you're not going to break something, so you don't have to feel nervous, right? But I want you to really feel the 4 legs of the chair holding up your spine. Feel the bottom of your spine where the tailbone curls underneath. It's tucked in right where your butt is, and it's going right up your back. And what I want you to pay close attention to, this is this rhythm section of your brain. I want you to pay attention to gravity. So your body has weight. But what that awareness of your weight is actually Mother Earth. What you're feeling as you're aware of the weight of your shoulders, the weight of your individual vertebrae stacked up like a pile of coins, the weight of your head on your neck, the weight of your knees, the weight of your ankles, the weight of your wrists. What you're doing when you focus on those and you shift your attention to focus on the weight is that you're meeting Earth. This great planet has this constant gravity that you can access whenever you want. That's why we call it Mother Earth, because Mother always has her arms open to her kid. And so this gravity, this quality of gravity, has a grounding effect on you, and that is the reptilian brain in a nutshell. There is something called interoception where you can, while you're doing this, keep your eyes closed for a sec, while you're paying attention to your spine, see if you can feel your heartbeat without putting your hand on your chest. Now, it takes a little time to search for it. It's an important exercise, even though it seems kind of silly and simple. See if you can find your heart rate and count it without touching your chest. It's hard. Now, anybody able to do it? Good. Okay, that's good. So they've studied this quality, and there is actually an equation where you try to count your heart rate by doing that, and then you take your pulse, and one minus the other over 100 or equals some quotient, over 1, I guess, equals a quotient. And they've found that, so for example, people who have a distorted self-body image, it's very, very wide apart, the sense of their heart rate versus their actual heart rate. And the closer you get, they've found, the closer your long-term health is. Yeah, and it's such a simple exercise to practice. And anybody can learn it. But we're not used to it, because we want to just go for the gold and get our number, and now we have this little thing we can just plug in when you go to the doctor, and the doctor doesn't even have to take your pulse. And I must tell you, it used to be nice to have the doctor come over and put his hand on your pulse. It's a nice thing to do. It's a way of making contact. Now you've got a machine to do it for you, and more we're cutting down the access the doctor has to the patient. Now he's got a prescription pad in front of your face, and he's writing something before he's even... So this is a simple exercise of accessing this. If we want to access this, close your eyes for a minute. We'll do a puppy brain one. Now, puppy is a very integrated animal. And if you ever watch a puppy run, it's really remarkable. What I want you to do, or a horse for that matter, I want you to feel how your right leg is connected to your left arm. It turns out that this limbic heart is about connection. It's about the the bliss of connectivity, of communication. So try to feel now the other arm, your right arm and your left leg or whatever, the opposite of what I said. And feel where they cross. Notice in your back, between your shoulder blades, the connection between your two arms that connect there. Notice in your lower spine, or even down below in the perineum, where your two legs connect. The connectivity is a kind of integration of your limbs that's extremely important in understanding safety and security. Okay, open your eyes for a minute. So there's a simple thing with kids that I explain to parents that is kind of profound, I think. So this is, when you're feeling your spine and gravity, it's a deeply personal thing. What you feel may be different than what you feel. It's a very private experience. And you could put words to it, and I could agree, but still the experience is deeply yours. And I call that the me first experience. Very, very important. Okay, so when the me first experience is secure, you feel safe in your body, you feel safe in your environment. There's a kind of quality that leads to an expression at the heart of joy and kindness, and we'll talk about why that is. You know, there's good feeling here. But when the me first down here is insecure, it's natural, perfectly natural, for us humans to react by kind of calling out, you know, kind of being, you know, in an emergency mode. And I'll call that the me only. What I mean by that is me against the world. I'm in a threatened state. And we understand why this, you know, you're insecure, your base is not secure, so you naturally act, whether you're hostile or excited or worried or compulsive or withdrawn, you're going to show it over here. Okay, does that make sense? That's fairly straightforward, right? Here's the part that's not so straightforward. The me only makes you more insecure. Why? Why? Oh, yeah, okay, so one is you're not feeling connected, so you're not connected, so you're alone. You really are me, it's me against the world. So you don't feel anybody's got your back. What else? What other reasons would being in a me-only kind of self-ish state, why would that make you more insecure? But why? Oh, good. So you have negative feedback from other people. Very good. So that's the second one. There are 5 reasons. So you feel alone, you get this negative feedback, for sure. People keep yelling at you. Why are you doing that, Johnny? I said stop yelling. So you keep getting negative feedback, and all you're doing is barking. That's all you're doing. You're barking, you know, emergency, emergency, intruder, no, I want that toy, or whatever it is. It's just barking. That's all this does. Why else? Well, one I said already is that this dysregulates down here, neurochemically. So in your body, you're thrown off temporarily. The rush. There are 2 more.
Emotional invalidation.
So it's a fancy word. I get scared by fancy words. But yeah, say more. What does that mean? Because that's kind of like negative feedback. Right, you're getting yelled at instead of supported. So I agree. But let me put it to you this way. This has an amplifying effect on the senses, right? We know that neurochemically. So I want you to think of it this way. You have an amplified effect of your own problems. And to borrow Ellen's language, you lose perspective. You lose perspective. You get, actually, your problem is bigger than another person's problem. I'll give you an example. I had a kid not long ago who was playing with his Legos, And his Legos, he was really working hard on this Star Wars thing, and it was breaking. And his mother was in the kitchen cooking and burned herself. And she was really, it was bad. And he was upset with his Legos, but he couldn't see that her problem matched his problem. His problem was bigger than her problem. And so this sense of perspective gets lost simply neurochemically from the amplified effect. When my dog's barking at the mailman, it is like the end of the world for him. And you know, we have a highway near us called the Sawmill Highway, and when you drive on that during rush hour, there are guys who drive like it's a matter of life and death, and they have to cut me off to get to the light before me.
That's called driving in Miami.
That's puppy brain. That's a threatened state. That's puppy brain that's feeling threatened and has to beat you to the light, right? So this is a very, you know, puppy level dysregulating downstream. So you get an amplified perspective. And you'll see some kids, things will feel louder. Stop yelling, Mommy. I'm not yelling. Don't touch me. This hurts. I didn't I just went like this. But exactly. But that is a physiologic phenomenon that's coming from puppy brain, feeling insecure and barking and amplifying the system. We call that the sensory child. That's all that is. It's a secondary effect, okay? But there's one more that's really important to me. That's a fancy word. Go ahead. Self-esteem, yeah, but that's kind of like confidence, right? So that's true, but I want you to think big, guys. What else happens when you're living in this cycle that keeps feeding itself back on the more insecure, the more selfish, the more insecure, the more selfish? It does. You're right.
You're not connected to bigger things.
Right. So what I would say to you is there's no purpose to your life. It's instant gratification. The puppy brain is only in the now. It's only interested in satisfying the need now. There is no yesterday and there's no tomorrow when you're living from a limbic level only. And so it doesn't go anywhere. You got the toy, and now it's kind of thrown in the corner, and now you want the new toy, right? It's a constant dissatisfaction because there's no purpose, higher purpose to your life. And that's where the mensch comes in. Now, we're not dogs, at least most of us. Dan, but most of us are not dogs here, and maybe giraffe is more. We have this thing called the neocortex, the new brain. And it's called the new brain for one very basic reason. It's always changing, always making connections, always evolving itself. And that's the growth mindset of the tomato plant versus the fixed mindset of the car. It literally, look it up, it's real science, is rewiring itself. I could tell you amazing stories about kids who I've seen their CAT scan. They have almost no brain, and the kid walks in and says, "Hi, doc, how are you?" No joke. And in my arrogance when I was younger, and you know, a professor in one of the university hospitals, I'd say to my students, "You obviously got the wrong CAT scan. Go back to radiology and get the right one." When in fact it was. I couldn't even see it. Because the brain has the power to rewire itself in ways that you cannot imagine. That's a growth mindset. And I never want you to forget that. If you remember anything from today, it's the fact that whatever doctor said your kid has this label or that is a moment in time snapshot. It is not something that's fixed to them for the rest of their life. Don't believe it. You're buying into something that is inherently wrong. There is no science behind that. We make those labels up and we change them at whim. We used to call it asthma, now we call it reactive airway disease. We used to call it autism, PDD, now, you know, pervasive developmental disorder, now we call it ASD. We used to call it, you know, it's a game. It's useful for research, but I don't want you buying into the fact that your kid has been given some label, whatever, eczema. and think that it's something hardwired into their system, because there's no evidence of that biologically. Now, what this is involved with is where the mensch comes in. And there are a couple of things that are involved here. The neocortex, I could sum up with one word, and that's the ability to imagine. So what I want you to do, this is going to be interesting. When I do this in New York or Boston, it's really cool. Here, it may not. We'll see what happens. Close your eyes, everybody.
Wait a second, I just think that he was...
Close your eyes. Close your eyes. No, close your eyes. This, I'll tell you why. Maybe I should do it. No, maybe I'll do it. I'm going to switch it up because it's too easy. The way I usually do it is like this. Close your eyes and imagine you're at the beach. Now that's a... Now you see what I'm talking about. So let's do it this way. Close your eyes and imagine that you're at the top of a mountain. Close your eyes, everybody. Really get the imagery. Work the imagery. Top of a mountain, snow-covered, beautiful, Shambhala-like place, somewhere in Tibet. Work it. Work the details of the picture that you're bringing up in your mind. Feel the temperature change in the room. Feel the wind. Is anybody else there, or are you there alone? Is there any vegetation? Fill in the blanks. Okay, now open your eyes. So what you just did was a miracle, a real miracle. You just did what no other animal on the planet could do. You voluntarily went to some weird place that you may never have been, and I'm sure your image is not exactly what your image is. It's deeply personal, but it's vast. And you fill in, you color it in all kinds of ways that's coming from somewhere. Maybe it's a story you heard, maybe it's a movie you've seen, maybe some National Geographic thing, or maybe it's just something from who knows where. What that does is extremely powerful. Imagination is one of the gifts of humans, a gift of the mensch. So the first is a kind of what I'll call zest, which is, you could call it charm too, but zest is a kind of enthusiasm about life. It's a kind of positive outlook. And this is really important in business. This is a secret of success. When you evolve from being the puppy into the, and really fully blossom this plant, this human organism, these get you success in life. And when I say success, it's all these things. The 5 successes that most parents want for their kid desperately, because I know how much you love your kids, you're here because you love your kids, is financial success, academic success, emotional success, social success, physical well-being. That's what everybody wants, especially every Jewish mother wants for their, right? But everybody wants that for their kids. They want these 5 successes. Okay. So zest is, in business, the guy who has this kind of positive outlook, he sees the glass is half full, he sees opportunity where other people see disaster, he's going to go places. And he's got to use his imagination to, when all hell's breaking loose and he goes, no, wait, there's something we can do here. That's gold. That's, he gets the raise. The second is grit. And we talk a lot about that in New York these days, no accident. Grit is you need imagination to sort of see success on the other side of challenge. I'm going to keep pushing through till I get there. I see it. It's a horizon. I've got my eyes on the horizon. I can get there, right? It takes imagination. And we know, all the type A's that you know have this when they're successful. The next is one that's not as obvious as these two, which I'll call generosity. And generosity is not just sharing your toy. It's the ability to imagine what another person needs. You could call it empathy. You could call it compassion. You could call it kindness, thoughtful, considerate. There are a lot of words for it in our language because it's so important. It's part of the fabric of community and marriages and families. But it is imagination to be able to imagine what another person needs. You have to kind of imagine standing in their shoes. And that's a true neocortical power. Okay? The next is something called, I like to call grace. What does that word mean to you? What does grace mean? Gracious, so the kind of thankfulness or gratitude. There's a lot of words for it, just like there were, what? Accepting is great. What? Humility. What is social graces? Manners, polite, following the rules, knowing right from wrong. There's a moral sense to it. What's grace under fire? Yeah, that's whoever, one of the guys said cool. They wanted their kid to grow up to be cool. That's cool. That's kind of James Bond cool, grace under fire, right? That's part of grace too. There's gracefulness, which is kind of smooth, moving, coordinated, right? These all are linked to this one word, grace. There's a perfection in it. Elegance. It's a good word. I like that word. Good. And it takes imagination to know right from wrong, or know that there's a higher authority, right? The grace of God. There's a certain imagination that humans have. Dogs don't actually believe in God. Not really. They don't need a synagogue. They just need a bone. And then they're happy. But we think a lot. We ask why. We consider, why are we here? What's the purpose of life? And all these high questions, and that's why we have a beautiful synagogue like this. And the grace of God is about understanding this higher entity that's in our existence of our life. And that's linked to this one. And then finally, and certainly someone who has grace in business is going to go places because he's consistent. He's dependable because he follows a rule that's bigger than himself, right? You can send him out on the job because he's not going to tell fart jokes to the client. Because maybe he will, but he'll work it correctly if he does it with grace. Right, if he does it with grace, he'll pull it off. But if he doesn't, he's ingratiate, he's not cool. So in business, it's important, it's dependable. It's a very dependable quality. Generosity in business is even more important. If you can imagine what the boss needs before everybody else, you're going to get the raise. It's very important, actually. We call it a soft skill, but it's nothing soft about it. And then finally comes insight.
Sorry, Dr. Cowan, how did you connect the imagination to grace? I just missed that.
You have to imagine a higher being. So we can do it right now. Close your eyes. Okay, what I want you to is, actually open your eyes. Sorry. Close your eyes. No, open your eyes. That was grace. Grace. Oh, keep your eyes open. Look at me. And while you're looking at me, I want you to see yourself sitting in the chair from above like a bird looking down. See the top of your head, but keep looking at me. See the top of your head, look at your posture without moving your eyes away from looking at me. Feel like you're looking bird's eye view down on you. See your legs, whether they're crossed or straight. Look at the chair. Take in the carpet. Take in the neighbor, the person sitting next to you. While you're looking at me, you're getting the second view down at yourself. You're self-reflecting. You're looking at yourself from outside of yourself. There is grace in that because you are actually simultaneously getting a different view. And you'll have poise. You'll carry yourself differently. When you talk about a dancer, they can do this really well. They see the way they are being seen. They carry themselves in a way because they're fully aware. And so it's a kind of, and that's imagination. And then finally, insight, which is the ability to look inside yourself, which is a bizarre thing to try to explain to a kid. What do you mean, look inside myself? You mean you're going to rip me open and look at... So, but it's not just this ability to self-reflect on who am I and how am I coming off to other people? Do they think I'm a jerk or stuff like that? It's not that as much as insight really is a kind of meaning making that comes from the ability of metaphor or analogy. How is this like that? And this is an exercise I do with kids all the time. How is this like that? How is this room like another room you've been in your life? How is this meeting of me talking to you like, I didn't say different, like the last speaker that was here talking to you? How is Dan like me? Not how is he different than me. In Graceland, we can really see very well how they're different. And developmentally, as kids grow up, they go through this stage before they get to this stage. They will go through how things are different before they can really figure out the similarities. But it's hugely important in business. The guy who can go and say, wait a minute, this is like that time when, remember when they didn't know what they were doing? And he's problem solving in a very creative way through metaphor. This is what why poetry is so important to humans. I have never, ever heard a dog tell a good poem. I mean, they're kind of blunt poems, but they're not great poems. It's certainly not Walt Whitman, right? No, my dog may disagree with me on that one, but metaphor is an exercise. Once a kid is 4 or 5, you start playing this game. This is like that time, Billy, when we were at, and he's, no, it's not, no, it's not, no, it's not. He's not there yet. That means he's not there yet, and that becomes a skill that we want to work on because you're connecting dots that aren't there. What I call this is these are the constellations of the stars. You look up at these dots in the sky, and suddenly you see Pegasus. And the first time you see Pegasus, the winged horse, which is really pretty clear. I don't know what it's like here, but you can't see stars?
No, we can see stars. We gotta get out of the city.
You see one or two. So anyway, so the idea is, really? So the idea is that connecting dots is very important in our own narrative of who we are and the meaning of ourselves. And this becomes very important. Now, neurochemically, this is the master of the puppy. And the model that I use, the Chinese medicine model, which is wood, fire, earth, metal, water, it's right here. This is water, this is wood, this is fire, this is earth, this is metal or gold. This is water, this is wood, this is fire, this is earth, this is metal. This is water, this is wood, this is fire, this is earth, this is metal. They are all the same model. What those are seasons. Spring, so you don't have seasons down here, so you guys. Spring, summer. Yeah, it's subtle. It's just subtle. You have to be a connoisseur. Right. That's cool. Connoisseurship. Orion and I were talking about connoisseurship. Very important with kids. That's grace. So winter, spring, summer, harvest, Sukkot, autumn. Same thing down here in the intense now state and then in the rhythm section. It's just the same thing happening in all the places. But understand, this is the master of this is the master of this, and there is a hierarchy that happens here. Now, with kids, when they're in this insecure state, our job is to know what kind of puppy do we have? Because, as I said at the beginning, my 2 kids are completely different. So one barks one way by getting hostile, and the other one gets compulsive. That's just barking. That's just letting the world know that the rhythm section is off. So I'll give you an example, and then I want to hear some talk. So understand that insight, grit, zest, generosity, and grace are all of these words here. Every one of them are here, including self-regulation, because when you have these working, balanced, they calm down the puppy. Why? They do this. They do something very important. The most basic fundamental aspect of our imagination is storytelling. Humans are gifted storytellers. And what we do is we take now and we expand it with our imagination to include the past, which we've gotten insights and connected the dots, and we project forward and include the future. And when we take the past and the future and incorporate them into the presence of now, it doesn't feel like such an emergency anymore. It's not the end of the world that your Legos broke. You suddenly have perspective. Now, as parents, we have our neocortex. One of the things Ellen is trying to do is to capture this so that you're not in an emergency state with your kid, right? To step back and see the lay of the land, which includes the past, the now, and the future. And our job is to create this story for our child so that they have their own narrative. They build their own narrative. Now, the way to do it, though, has to be customized. One size doesn't fit all, because that's back to fixed mindset. All ADD kids get Ritalin. That's nonsense. It's stupid. Some kids may benefit from it, but all kids? That's like ridiculous. Nothing works that way. So to customize it, the reason I wrote the book was to understand that some kids do have this propensity, but their gift, their hidden mensch gift, is grit. But you can't see the grit because all of these have something very interesting. And this is what Chinese medicine really gave me. They're balanced. Grit without grace is the bully. That's just this. Zest without insight is the class clown. That's the fire child, overexcited and can't settle down, and he's impulsive and jumping out of his seat and wagging his tail too hard. Generosity without grit is the one being bullied. Okay? Then they start to worry. Grace without zest is the one who's uptight and rigid and negative. The glass is always half empty instead of half full. And they get kind of uptight and rigid. And that's the metal child, dysregulated. Earth child, dysregulated. Fire child, dysregulated. The gift is there. It's just not coordinated. And of course, insight without generosity is the weird kid sitting in the corner talking about God but not knowing how to explain it to anybody. Okay, they're the goth kid that, that's the water child in a dysregulated way because he can't share it effectively. It's in there. The gift is in there in every one of your kids. Our job is to release the gift, release the mensch, right? And in order to do that, there's a very simple way to do it. Let's take, so you understand the fire child is a very sort of summer, happy-go-lucky, excited kid. The wood kid's got this drive, and kind of more type A, a little more competitive, has to win, has to be first. The earth kid is the one who's very caring and loving and sweet and nice, and can I sit on your lap, and I want to help everybody, and she needs water, so I go and run her, get her. The metal kid is the one who has this perfection of form, and order matters, and details matter, and they have a beautiful aesthetic sense of life. That's their gift. But when they're dysregulated, they're too rigid. They don't go with the flow. And the water child is the one, this winter, introspective, very deep old soul. They move kind of slow. They don't like to be rushed. They have their own kind of rhythm. They dance to the beat of a different drum. That's everyone from Thoreau to Leonardo da Vinci to, J.K. Rowling's. Strange people who just channel stuff into the world. They're our prophets, really, our sages. So each of them, you have them in your house. It's just we have to cultivate them. So let's pick one of them. Give me one. What? Fire. Is that okay? Can we do a fire? Just to give you an example of a fire kit. So the same thing is true here. These relationships all require balancing. And this is the model, and I want to keep it really simple so that you understand where to begin with your kid. How many of you think you have fire kids? Happy-go-lucky, a little too excited, sometimes inappropriately loud and sensory, and okay. So a fire kid, if we draw this model, and this is based on, I figured this out based on Leonardo da Vinci's model of the person, you know, that it's really cool. So in Chinese medicine, the circle and the square is very powerful imagery. The circle is heaven, and or the heavens, the sky, and the square is the ground you stand on. But the way he did it, he put it off center. It's really kind of cool what he did. He put it like this, circle and the square, and then he put the head there, and the two legs go there. There's the triangle. Now, I want you to think about this. If this is a fire kid, fire is there, wood is there, water is there, metal is there, and earth is there. And so what we want to do is we want to balance the child. And the way I do it with parents now is always start with standing on two legs. You need two legs to feel safe. All we're saying is when you're seeing this behavior, you're insecure and you're barking. That's all we're saying. It's not pathology. It's not some label that you're going to have to go, you know, for the rest of your life, I'm bipolar, or don't buy into that. That's fixed mindset thinking. What Carol Dweck found in her research at Stanford was fixed mindset limits outcomes. Growth mindset improves outcomes. Just the attitude you have about your child changes the outcome. So if this is a fire child, we know that we want to work on, for now, we're going to work on arms, but before you can use your arms, you've got to be able to stand solid on two legs, right? And the two legs have to be, the ground floor are going to be down here. So we have to ask about pooping, we want to look at breathing, and we want to look at sleep. Now sleep for fire kids can be a real problem sometimes. Sleep training for fire kids. And yet of all the kids, because water cools fire. Water cools down fire. They really need their sleep. And if they don't get their sleep, they have ADD. And if you want to cure a fire kid's ADD, you really look at the rhythm and depth of sleep. And it can transform their attention. And I don't mean giving them sleeping pills. I mean literally work on the whole organic quality of how they move into boredom. The big barking of a fire child is, this is boring. They're impatient. They want it to be exciting all the time. And then they become addicted, whether it's video games or drugs or jumping out of airplanes. They want the rush all the time. And we want to show them that there's a counterbalance to that that makes them feel actually secure. And that needs practice. And it's a very good place to begin. Once you have them standing, often what I'll find with fire kids who are dysregulated, they're standing on one leg. They're control freaks. They've got this down, but they don't have, fire melts metal, so they're not gracious. They're too loud, and they're at grandma's, and they're smacking grandma. They're not mean kids, but they just think it's funny to watch grandma like, oh, what did you do? It's not cool though. It's not nice, but they're doing it to create, or they're sitting in the class and they keep dropping their pencil because everybody laughs. And they want everybody to laugh. And the teacher says, Johnny, stop doing that. But why would I stop doing it? You're boring. And I'm making it more interesting. So it's counterintuitive. So they have to learn graciousness, which is the higher one. So one leg is neocortical and one leg is rhythm section. And together, they can help start regulating this. And so you're always working a yin and a yang. You're always working on the ground floor and on the top floor to get the heart to settle down. And it's a very simple way to think about it. Then you can work on developing, earth kindness and generosity and grit and drive. But first start with these two, one from here, one from column A, and one from column B. And often, just doing that in some kids is all you need to get them over that developmental hump. It's very simple. But you got to know which kid you have. And the fun of learning which kid, which, is in my book, and Ellen's creating all kinds of opportunities for you guys to explore that more, because nobody's a perfect fire kid. And nobody's a perfect earth kid, because you've got mixes of these. You might have a lot of zest, but some compulsivity too. The mix is the fun of customizing it to your kid. But what I'm trying to do is just make it simple and map it out for you so that you can say, oh, as Dan said, and I get said this from parents all the time, I've fallen in love with my kid all anew, because suddenly I realize my kid is not a mini me. Right? It was very liberating for me. I grew up with a fire dad who was bigger than life. When he died, thousands of people came to his funeral. He was a really beloved guy. And I thought I was supposed to be a fire person. Yeah. And it was liberating for me to find that I didn't have to be that, and that's okay. So you liberate your child and you liberate yourself when you start looking at his temperament from his organic model. The Western temperament model is kind of a bummer. It's the easy child, the difficult child, and the slow to warm up child. I mean, 2 out of 3 of those are a drag. So in this, being water versus earth or fire, one's not better than the other, and they're like non-judgmental terms. I'm not big on labeling, but there's an organic way. The way I say it to kids is, this is your secret power. And we have to develop it so that you become a hero. And that's the one word none of you said in your list. And a true hero is the mensch. It's the unsung hero. That's the mensch. So I think I'm going to stop here. I want to hear some comments, because we're just about time for some questions.
I do have a question.
Yep.
When you were talking about, you mentioned eczemas, and when you were talking about epigenetics.
Yes, and rather than just genetics,
right.
just hardwired.
Right. So would you say that nothing is hardwired, even like a
Nothing
severe
is hardwired.
allergy, like a
Exactly.
severe
I'll tell you a story. Do I have time to tell a story? Or? Okay. So a kid came to me. Quite a while ago now. The grandmother knew me from the hospital that I was working in. And she knew I was doing this weird stuff. And I liked really difficult cases. I was known in the community for the things that nobody could figure out. And she was really worried about her grandson. Her mother came, her mother delivered the baby, during pregnancy, in the last trimester, the baby developed a mass in his kidney. Totally freaked out the family, as you can imagine, on ultrasound. And as soon as the baby's born, they had to do surgery. And it was a tumor, so he lost his kidney. And he seemed to be doing okay after that, but the mom was kind of ungrounded. It was really stressful for everyone. And by about 4 or 5 months, when they were introducing food, he kind of started projectile vomiting and stopped growing. And his growth just went from roly-poly baby to crash. Right? And when they did allergy testing, he was allergic to 91 things. Documented. I have the lab work. And the mom was out of her mind. He was basically allergic to everything. And he's losing weight. And she was completely panicked. They wanted to put a G-tube in and do formula, and they didn't know if he was allergic to the components of the formula. And they were in a lockdown mode and really freaked out. And the allergist said, well, this is one of those multiple allergy syndromes, and there's nothing you can do, and he needs to stay on steroids, and blah, 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 blah. So he's in the, and he won't eat it. They can't go near his mouth. He spits everything right out. So they're there, and they're telling me the story, and the mom is in emergency mode. And you can understand, it doesn't sound very good for Dr. Steve Cowan to say, this is not an emergency.
Right.
But it's not. You won't get there if you stay in emergency mode. You'll make a mistake if you stay. You know, I once ran a program at one of the hospitals where I'd take first years into the ER and make them meditate in the room when someone's bleeding or when someone's coding or something. Because if they start freaking out, they're going to hurt somebody. They're yelling at nurses. And all. Anyway, so they're telling me this story, and they're like, you know, I'm like trying to hold my ground because they're, woo! And meanwhile, the kid's over there playing with some toys. And I've got my eye out on the kid all the time. And he's this scrawny little kid with multiple allergies, right? So according to this genetics, sorry, dude, you're screwed. So I said, hold on, feed him for me. And I see, she said, really, you want me to feed him right here? I said, yeah, just feed him. Take out whatever you've got with you. And she gets down on the ground, and she holds the back of his head, and she starts shoving stuff into his eyes. And you see his body language is going, ah! So I said, stop, what are you doing? Emergency mode. Now you understand why. You have to have compassion for her because she was, you know, her baby who almost died at birth is now dying. Or leaving the planet, or what? No one knows what's going on. I said, stop. So I took all the food that she had with her, and she had bags of food, all different things. And I put it all on the floor, you know, dirty, doctor's office floor. And I just played with it with him on the floor, and then I left them there, and I took them and I held their hands. I just held their hands. I said, you've been through hell. You know, first you took a hit with this surprise of the, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm talking to them, and we're talking about, you know, I'll do some other tests, and there's some herbs maybe we'll use, or some homeopathy. I'm just buying time. I just wanted them to ground them. It's very soft. Meanwhile, I'm looking over the corner, and I see him playing with the food. And he's like playing with it. And after a few minutes, he's like, and he's eating it. And I said, don't turn your head. Just look over. And there he is, and he's like having a good time, right? I said, so, non-emergency, which seems so counterintuitive. I said, okay, I do not want you feeding your child. It's like, wait, my child is failing to thrive, and you're saying don't feed my, do not feed it. You just lay the food out, let him play with it. If you want to do it on the floor, for the next 2 weeks, I'll call you every day. And I want you to let him play with food. Starts gaining weight. No vomiting. Now the miracle of this, and the reason why I'm saying it to you, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. A year and a half later, I retested him, and he wasn't allergic to anything, including peanuts, including all the big hot ones. And that blew my mind, because I didn't expect that.
Wow.
I figured some would still be there. So, you know, the advantage now that I'm an old guy is that I've seen so many kids grow up. You know, I've taken care of kids, and seeing the arcs of life go, you know, you see enough of it, I'm kind of stupid. But eventually it sinks in, oh yeah, right. We're pretty creative when we need to survive. But we have to believe in the power of our children to do this. And if we don't believe in it, they don't believe in it. And in fact, you know, there are other stories about that kid that are quite interesting later on. The resonance with the mom. What do you think the mom's job was? Fine chef. French chef. Dad and mom ran a very expensive restaurant. What else? Other questions?
Cool. Well, it's more like a comment. I have a 5-year-old girl who does not poop and will not let me put any good food in the mouth. You know.
Yes, right.
It's her temperament.
Well, it's more than her temperament. What I want you to take home from today, before you just cast it off, because that can sound fixed mindset, If you just say, oh, it's her, that's just the way she is, that can sound like that's just, no, she's in an insecure state and she's barking. So our job is, we first have to see the little subtitle underneath saying, insecure state. She's perceiving the world, the heart is calling out, barking. And not pooping means she can't let it go.
Which I'm completely aware of, and we've been like working on it in different levels.
And this is water cools fire. So you know that she needs more water, real water. Water. So that's number one. So go ahead, now ask your question.
So I've been, with her, we've been through this whole process for a couple of years now, and one of the things that I've come to understand quite a bit is that what you said at the beginning, she's here to teach me something.
Definitely. They're all my teachers.
And I've seen that hand in hand. It has to go with the healing of ourselves as parents.
The
because-
guilt, the shame,
and
the
our
perfectionism.
own childhood experiences
Very
that we
much so.
have to go back and heal because we are passing them to them.
Thank you for saying that. That's very, very true.
And for me, it's been, I see her every day and I just give thanks to her because we're still not through this whole pooing situation yet.
Right.
But I know that it is something that we both have to work together and that we're going to get to the end and it's going to,
That's beautifully said. And what I usually tell parents is the buttons your kid pushes in you are your buttons. So look at those buttons. They're not his buttons, they're your buttons. So those buttons are your spiritual practice, right? That's why he's here, to push those buttons so that you can work on those buttons, so that you can become a mensch, so you can become a true human. And then you have to look at your own sense of security. Because there's, like you said, in your own childhood, I'm not into guilting, it's your father's fault or it's your, because it can go on endlessly. It's not about guilt and shame. It's, and pointing fingers. It's about, in the growth mindset, it's very simple. What's the skill that you want to work on for yourself, for your child? So, the beautiful thing of what I do is I work with parents. The kids are the easy part. I can get down on the floor and play with any kid. Parents are the challenge, right? And so it's very important to understand that my job is fairly easy because I know you love your kid. So you're in it for the long run. You may have forgotten because the buttons have been pushed so many times, but I don't have any doubt that you love your kid. And that's the hook that keeps you in the game, developing yourself for the sake of your child.
I think that's a very important thing you said, that we're looking at this and we're seeing our kids. We have to figure out how are we going to get our kids there.
Yeah,
And what you just said is, it would probably be so much more helpful if we take this map and start putting it on
You
ourselves
have
first
to.
and continually.
And even explain it to your kid that what you are working on. Because when they see you're working on something, you're a role model for them to work on something.
So your next book, Fire Parent, Water
I'm working on fire teacher, water teacher. Because the mismatch of those is very challenging. But you're right, yeah.
So even when you understand those buttons,
Yes.
you know that you're the one that
Well, it's
learn from that.
it's your teaching,
Your teaching, right?
your practice.
How do you help them?
Well, first,
When you see them not.
what's your name? Carolina. What Carolina is saying is, and I wholeheartedly agree, what are you working on in yourself? What is that button? Give me a specific example of the button that your kid is pushing. Frustration?
Yes, frustration.
Order, chaos?
Not happy.
You. The button in you.
Oh, in me?
Yes, the button he's doing. What is he eliciting in you?
I just want him to be happy.
Yeah, but so give him morphine.
Or cookies.
You want him, so you want him to be on a journey.
On a journey of
So you want him,
finding himself and being
yeah, but,
happy with who he is.
so, well, but how old is he?
13.
So 13, you're never going to be happy. That's what the bar mitzvah is all about. So you're not going to be happy. So happy wasn't listed here, guys. Joy is different than happiness. Happiness is, okay, so happy, I like what you said about, I want him to be happy with who he is. But 13 is a very important time of questioning, who am I? Who is he? He's still being developed.
Now he's 13, but it's been.
Well, but being happy with who you are, Mommy, who am I? You know, so first make sure you know who you are. And you want to create a path for him that lets him discover who he is, not just be happy with who he is. Because he's not who he's going to be tomorrow. So being happy with who you are is a kind of complacency that ruins the path. So I'd rather you say it like, I want him to be happy I want him to be happy with the process of meeting challenges and rising through them or recovering. As opposed to this blanket global statement, I want him to be happy, which is so abstract and impossible. You're creating something for yourself that's just going to torture you. You're going to lose sleep. And
But even with the little things.
yeah, no, especially with the little things.
The little things are
No,
the
it-
most important things.
They're not the most important things.
not.
They are definitely, they're only the most important things in the emergency. In the big picture, this is the big picture. In the big picture, the little things don't matter at all. So I want him to not, I want him to move beyond the little things. I want him to pay attention to them and care about them. But if he gets stuck on it, and you need to give me a more specific example, and I can problem solve it with you. But the reality is that a kid who's dissatisfied with himself, maybe he's hard on himself, is that what you mean? Is he more of a metal kid?
I think so.
Yeah.
Haven't quite figured
So that's that hypercritical aesthetic. Nothing, the glass is always half empty. Right. He could be a fire kid, or he could be standing on one leg. But with metal kids, it's very challenging. I want you to take what you want for him, which is to be happy, and just put it in a safe and take it out in 25 years. That's not what matters right now. What matters is flexibility. Learning to let go. Reboot, come back, tomorrow's another day. Fire melts. Fire, optimism, melts, softens it. So you're not so hard. So it's not the end of the world. In metal, you're hyper-focusing on the little details. And that's, I'm stupid, Mommy. I can't do math. I'm bad at, you know what I do? I do this little thing with kids, fact or feeling, I call it. So I'll do it with you guys because you're little kids. I'm an old guy now. What's the difference between a fact and a feeling? And you're going to do this with him tonight. What's the difference between a fact and a feeling? Go ahead.
It's hard to put into words.
What's the difference between a fact or a feeling?
A fact typically is something that you have evidence for, or you would, it would be so true, or perceived.
So if I hit you on the head, that's not true. Your pain is not true.
Oh, no, I meant feeling, I thought you meant emotional feelings.
I am.
All right.
So when you're sad, that's not true.
Oh, no, I don't agree with what I'm saying.
I just want to know what the difference between them is.
Objective versus subjective.
Objective, subjective? Say more about that.
Something that you can see or demonstrate empirically that other people can see versus a feeling is what you experience.
They're both truths, they're just arrived at different.
Say again?
They're both truths, they're just arrived at different.
They're arrived at differently. Yeah, but there's a fundamental difference between, I'll give you an example. Fact or feeling. George Washington was the first president. Fact. I'm bad in math. Fact or feeling? You sure?
Yes.
Oh, but I have the evidence. Look, I got D's. I got D's. Fact or feeling?
Feeling.
I agree with you. Why?
Because your perception.
Wait, what? Wait, what? I heard something over in this part of the... Exactly. It can be changed. So when I'm... facts. I can't change George Washington being the first president unless you give me new information that there was a president before him. But feelings are true, but they're constantly changing. And when I have this discussion with kids, you're going to have exactly this discussion with them. And so feelings are like the weather. It's true, but today is not like yesterday's weather. And tomorrow may be different. It's objective, but it's changing. And facts don't really change. Okay? So it's very important. Some metal kids think certain things, they make everything feel like a fact in their statement. When you listen to the way he says it, he's saying it like it's a fact. I'm bad in math. I'm stupid, Mommy, as if it's a fact. And what we need to make him realize is honor that statement with dignity, but define it as a feeling, not as a fact. And let him see the difference. And automatically, we know it's a feeling, it's not a fact, because it can change. And therefore, right now you may not be, but tomorrow, that's the growth mindset. So I know we have 5 minutes. One more question, yeah?
How do you honor his perspective, the way that he sees himself, and then try?
You honor it by the brilliance of this kid who's an aesthetic quality. This kid is really hard on himself, hypercritical, probably hypercritical of mom too, of everyone. So you honor that as a gift. That's his superpower.
What do you tell him?
You tell him he's got a secret power that sees things very precisely. But we have to develop that power because right now it's not working for you. You're not a hero. What's a hero? I do this with every kid. What's a hero? How would you define a hero? No. No. A hero is not someone who can do everything well. What does that mean?
Makes the world a better place.
Yeah, what does that mean? I mean, he fixes cars and...
That's a good question. I'm not-
What does that mean, make the world a better place? You're onto it, but...
He takes the action.
No, but now you're just restating. What does that mean? What does that mean, make the world a better place? That's a very abstract... I don't know what that means. What, but what does that mean, improves? Like, will you make more money?
Maybe you offer something of your value and your unique output.
No, there are a lot, I can think of a lot of presidential candidates that are offering their opinions. I'm not sure I'd call them heroes. All right, let's do it this way. Yeah, I guess. Let me ask it to you this way. Who's a hero in your life? In your life. Not a superhero.
My husband,
Why?
I guess because he can be there when I need him.
There you go. That's a hero. Down and dirty. That's the definition of a mensch. He shows up. Okay? That's a hero. And so your son, in order to develop into a hero who acts for others, has to be able to see the big picture. When you're micromanaging down here, you don't see the big picture. You're not thinking about the needs of others. You're not thinking about how the glass is half full. You're not thinking about a higher spiritual power of right and wrong. You're certainly not thinking about how is this like that. And you're not thinking about what success would look like on the other side of this failure. So developing the high level of hero, mensch, human, is why we're here. And so first you honor the skill at which this kid is so clear at seeing the micro details of why he's bad or why he's stupid. And you say, wow, you are amazingly perceptive. But it's not really working for you. It's like not really heroic because it's a me-only state. It's not really big me. It's not embracing the community, realizing you're not alone. There are other people here. And using his so you want to tap his imagination to imagine what it would be like to help somebody else with math. And you could have him practice teaching another kid math, and he'll get perspective on the fact, oh, maybe I'm not as dumb as I thought I was because I taught that kindergarten math, and now you've created a very practical way to give him perspective. And with that word perspective, I'm passing it over. So,
Okay, I know a lot of people still have questions. And
I need water.
we want to move into the book signing right after we do the raffle. So I'm giving everyone the opportunity to write down their questions on index cards.
I was talking to Orion.